Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. My name is Corey Dockendorf. I am a solutions architect here at Platform.sh, and I am joined by my counterpart. Sir, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from here.
Sure. Guillaume, AKG. Be there for so long, around 10 years. And first, I need to apologize. I'm jet lagged, sick, and French. So we'll do our best to make that a good hour for you.
All three things on the same day. It's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today. So ideally what we want to do, I'm going to help moderate this session as we dive into a critical topic for 2025, and that is how to lower costs and maintain high quality while DevOps and infrastructure trends are changing in 2025. So today we're going to go through a little bit of a back and forth between myself and I will refer to you as G, as I always have. It's much easier this way for me because I am not French. But at the same time, we're going to go back and forth and discuss a couple topics. We have a Q&A as well that we'll try and assess at the end and try and answer your guys' questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat channel as we go along. So first, let's start with, were the 2024 predictions accurate on where everything is going in these tech trends today? We'll start G.
And that's an interesting topic because like every year, everybody does their own prediction, but nobody is an oracle. So we actually don't really know what's going to happen and well, things can evolve. As you know, many things have changed that past year. So let's start with the obvious, like adoption of AI. And couldn't be a business webinar if we don't actually slap AI somewhere in machine learning. So everyone was promising us like big changes in all the different tooling, in all the way we actually manage infrastructure and DevOps with AI. What we've seen in a year is actually not that much. Sure, things have changed about LLMs and all the wonderful things we can do with them now, but not really on the product and infrastructure side. So that's a good question, I think, for actually the year coming, 2025. But as of now, we've just seen like a couple of features on some different products, like GitLab, for example, or all the others, actually trying to retrofit some kind of machine learning into this. What I really want to see there for the future is actually how companies can build their own models to actually optimize things, like, for example, auto-scaling based on their own needs and not some just generic ones. So that's the first thing. We'll get deeper into that after. But let's go through those 2024 ones.
So let's talk about the rise of infrastructure as code, right? Infrastructure as code has been transformative for IT operations over the past decade, right? If not longer. We've seen everybody start to drive this change because driven by this need for scalability, consistency, speed in managing complex cloud environments, right? Traditionally, infrastructure used to be provisioned and maintained by hand, which is no longer a best practice these days. It requires time, it requires a lot of talent, and a lot of things can happen and go wrong, right? So it's basically time consuming and error prone. As organizations increasingly adopted cloud computing and DevOps methodologies, the demand for automation and repeatability in infrastructure management became critical, right? This became our day-to-day. Infrastructure as code solves these challenges by using, machine readable configuration files, whether it's a YAML, a JSON, an HCL, or anything along those lines, to define and manage what that infrastructure is. So now I've obfuscated the code piece and infrastructure and put that within my workflow altogether, right? So now I'm managing it, version control on infrastructure and as well as my code. So this rise of infrastructure as code is also tied closely to the broader shift, and I love this methodology, the cattle, not pets in infrastructure management, right? Where resources are treated as disposable and interchangeable. This mindset basically encourages infrastructure to be modular, stateless, ephemeral, making it a natural fit for cloud native architecture, which we've seen a gigantic shift to these days, and even moving to containers and Kubernetes, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So
yeah, I think we'll agree. This one has been done. I don't know if
and over
24 before, but most companies are actually doing it one way or the other. So
100%.
Okay. On the other side, it's not really the case for microservices. I've started reading books books about microservices maybe 8 years ago or something like this, with all those big concepts and best practices. What we've seen in our clients base right now is kind of the opposite move. They've tried microservices, they've put some projects up, and then realized that somehow the architecture was not thought out, or maybe they don't have enough different teams to justify the need to split those different services. So what we've seen so far is actually, for the sake of performance and maintainability, a lot of those clients are actually moving back more to a monolith approach, or just a few really specific microservices, but not the whole architecture. We've seen a client that was running 17 microservices for an extranet for a rental company, actually moving back to just 3 application, which made a lot more sense. Everything UI, everything invoicing, everything sales, instead of those 17 different communicating together. So on that one, I would say no, never happened, and actually quite the opposite.
Now, the expansion containerization and Kubernetes, right? Everything is containers these days. Everything is in a container. Your code's in a container. Your services are in a container. Everything is in a container. So this is not a new practice. We didn't see as much of a rise. To G's point of people going back to a monolithic approach, we've seen development teams go into this and try to use this and go back on a monolith piece because they don't have the dev skills, right? They implemented it poorly, or their code was not implemented correctly. So I wouldn't say too much of an expansion as much as we see thinking what Kubernetes was going to do, the auto scaling piece that I never have to worry about my application from a scaling perspective or from a flexibility perspective. And we've seen a lot of articles and conversations with different companies that they want to pull that back because of the way that they've implemented it. There's still, I wonder if there's going to be another trend where everybody's going to jump back into this again now that they've had some time to play with it, made some different changes, and realize the cost, the increase in cost of going from a monolithic approach. Again, I feel like we're going backwards and doing everything over and over, and we're not learning any lessons. But ideally, hopefully, we go back into the containerization and Kubernetes piece, and we see the self-healing abilities, the scaling pieces, and more of reliability and efficiency on these things, because that's really where we want to go. We want to be able to innovate faster and optimize these resources and these utilizations through scaling. And I hope that we get to see this rise again, because I don't want everybody to think, hey, it didn't work that one time, we're never going to use it again, because they implemented it poorly. So we'll see what happens in 2025, but I think really it'll be 2 years before we see any like jump or expansion into this containerization and kubes.
Our containers are definitely here to stay, whether that's Kubernetes based on Docker or something else. That could be a lot of different things. We could see new players coming to play, even old players coming there, but definitely containers are here to stay. The advantages compared to VMs, or obviously bare metal, are just
right
easy these days. So that's going to stay and that's going to evolve. However, another one is interesting, serverless. So I mean serverless in a sense of, for example, what you could see on AWS Lambda. So more function as a service than complete serverless. Because if you think about it, serverless could be also a platform as a service, like we do at Platform.sh, where you don't see the servers. They exist. They're somewhere. They're running the processes, but you don't actively manage them. In that slide, it's more about functional as a service. And functional as a service were a big hit 2 or 3 years ago. A lot of applications were moving towards that nearly infinite scalability, no need to manage all the resources behind it. There are 2 main downsides on that. Well, let's say 3. First one is obviously the cost of it, especially when your application are a bit more, let's say, bigger and use more resources. All that time spent bootstrapping the function, putting everything in place, running it, especially on the cold boot, can actually consume a lot of resources and may end up costing a lot. So only specific function should be used that way. And for some others, you should be better just running a classic daemon running 24/7. So we've seen that cost. Also the performance side of it, depending on what you do in there on those functions. But sometimes when you do transaction into your database or anything like this, you can really have locking mechanism that's gonna, once again, lose some time on that execution, indeed costing us more in the end. So serverless is a mixed bag. I think a lot of application and even some framework were kind of dedicated to serverless. Uh, what we've seen from our clients, less and less the case. They still use serverless in some specific optimized use cases, and that's perfectly fine. But most of their monoliths and most of their backend still run on actual server and processes like usual. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that evolves. Maybe we'll get some new things coming on serverless as well. But right now, for everything functional as a service, like microservices, I would say definitely downwards from the previous years.
Sure. Emphasis on security integration. This is definitely a gone up trend for sure. How often do we see somebody being affected on a global scale of some sort of security attack, right? So cyber threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated, right? They're evolving as well. Organizations are prioritizing this type of integration, security integration throughout the entire development and operational workflow, right? This shift really shows the growing adoption of DevSecOps, which is the methodology that embeds security into every phase of the software development lifecycle, right? So instead of treating security as a separate final step, we're now seeing companies integrate security practices directly in the CI/CD pipeline and throughout the development process. So they're using different tools. SNCC is one of SNCC, SNYK. I always think it's SNCC when I read it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we also see a lot of people needing for OWSAP dependency checks, automatically scanning code for vulnerabilities, right? Infrastructure security tools like HashiCorp Vault and any security tools that you can use to implement in that lifecycle are being leveraged. We want these global enterprise level companies and even the small mom and pop shops that are being affected and seeing almost 50% of advanced bot traffics hitting sites on a regular basis these days. To how do you alleviate that? We can't think of security as an afterthought anymore. It must be included in the entire life cycle so that when you do go live and when you do have your site up and running or your application running, you're not worried. You've checked everything through. You've gone through the process. You've patched as many holes as possible. And there are other tools, profilers that you can use for assessments like this and monitoring, right? And we'll get into a little bit of that later, but that's one of the things that we really want to, you want to save yourself that cost because you want this in your system as much as humanly possible and in your code so that you're not having a breach. You're not having a moment of, everything is down because you're being affected this way, right? Downtime is money.
Something that really changed in the past 2 years is also new vector attacks that are coming
Yes.
from dependencies and packages. We've seen that with NPM, PyPy. Nearly all the languages were affected, where someone would take over a public package somewhere in GitHub, then inject something, and then you pull that dependency without even knowing it. When you think that right now, a Next.js project, when you bootstrap it, has nearly 300 dependencies, if only one of them has a backdoor or something, you're affected. So
Sure.
bringing those static analysis tool and those dependency management tools into your CI/CD pipeline is just a must these days.
And real quick, that's with the automation piece as well. There's still the piece of human oversight. You need to have that there, right? You can't just guarantee that automation is going to catch everything, right? Human oversight still needs to be involved in that whole process as well. So,
yeah. All right, edge computing is a big one. Edge computing, once again, can mean a lot of different things. Can mean running things directly into your car computer for self-driving, could be into IoT, could be into a lot of things. The way we see edge at Platform.sh is more on the CDN side, the content delivery, and basically all the point of presence that are really close to the users of your different application and websites. So, and in that case, edge computing has opened a lot of new possibilities, running workloads directly on the client or next to the client. And that changed a lot of things. It's not clear right now. Best practices are really hard to come through. There are, however, really interesting use cases. And that's something we're going to talk pretty soon at Platform.sh and do some announcement around that. But we've all seen on the marketing side that all your Google Analytics trackers and stuff are getting blocked. Now, with edge computing, we have new ways to actually kind of collect that data with respecting, obviously, all the privacy laws in place. but we can collect more information and we can handle that differently. So all those use cases, I think we're just at the start of it. But many providers are becoming now edge computing providers, all the kind of old CDN. And when I say old, I don't mean not innovative. I mean players that have been there for like 10 years or so, like Cloudflare, Fastly, and
Right.
all those ones are building up new offering based on edge computing that every day can do a lot more than they used to be. So it's going to be up to the developers to take that up on, because that's going to be a new paradigm also on how you develop for those specific use case, how you deploy those applications. Right now, if you've tried a bit like just putting workers on Cloudflare, there is not even versioning or anything like this. So trying to get that done right is not super easy. So we'll see on the DevOps piece how we can also alleviate those risks and those management with those different components.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of this, especially in like the public transit systems and healthcare and medical systems, because you have a lot of this extremely valuable data and information transferring across mobile phones and iPads and everything else. So it's one of those things like I think that we're going to see a very large push as we move more of these, the original older, as you said, older options, these companies that are moving into these cloud spaces and understanding security and everything, how they're going to manage everything at the edge layer is going to be a huge change in workflows and for the developers themselves. And I think we're going to see this ramp up pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot more embedded and running on device.
Absolutely.
Even things like Apple Intelligence and stuff like this, where basically we can now just infer with AI models locally on any device, well, nearly any. So that's going to be really interesting to see where that goes.
Absolutely.
All right, we're nearly done with that list.
Yeah, we've only got a couple more, we promise. So increasing focus on continuous improvement. This goes back to containerization and everything as well. This is something that is just ongoing consistently and not going anywhere. We're gonna keep this in place. But we've seen that some customers are not leveraging this yet and trying to figure out what their story is and going into 2025 what they're going to do with that, right? So continuous improvement, this has become critical in most organizations, right? Aiming to just optimize application performance. We should no longer be in the world of we're pushing bad code, right? We have enough tools to look at it, provide insight, provide information so that you can actually optimize all the way down to the application as to what's wrong, doing updates on like PHP and Python, or making sure that your MySQL calls are exactly what they need to be, right? And this is going to, again, reduce cost and enhance those user experiences by increasing those competitive markets. The thing is here is we use tools like Blackfire.io to play a pivotal role, right, in this process, because it's able to provide not only performance monitoring but also profiling skill sets. So you can identify bottlenecks in your code early. You can find inefficient database queries, analyze your resource utilization, which is a big one, right? So it's called Blackfire.io is the name of the tool. So it really goes into, no problem. It really goes into performance optimization, and this integrates directly into your CI/CD pipeline, right? So it's making sure that your DevOps are catching things in your development and test environments and staging environments before you ever get to production, right? It's a very valuable tool. We do it here at Platform.sh, and we integrate it directly into the workflow. And we want to emphasize on tools like this because we want to make it so that developers spend more time building what they like to do and not worrying about catching bugs all the time. They want to be able to say, hey, PHP is out of date, or this is done. Just tell me. I don't want to dig through logs. I don't want to spend a bunch of time and cycles trying to find this one small thing that's causing us an issue. Just give me a tool that's going to tell me what it is so that I can fix it and I can move faster.
Yeah, and we're talking about tools, but I think in the end, it's also beginning some time on your DevOps activities. Like every time I discuss with DevOps team, they're spending nearly 40% or maybe half of their time just doing upgrades and what I would call non-value added tasks, upgrading PHP, upgrading machines, make sure everything works. Where when we thought of DevOps 15 years ago, that new position job was to make sure dev would work well with ops, and they kind of became the new ops, unfortunately. So I really think those people should spend more time actually optimizing the process, the toolings, everything around that, making the life of other easier, and not just spend days debugging issues or even rolling upgrades and stuff like this. So
Yeah.
that's always what we've tried to do at Platform for the past 12 years, is
Mhm.
making sure that anything that can be automated is actually automated, so that you can actually use your brain juice to improve stuff and make things better.
Saves time, money, and space.
All right.
Monitoring.
Yes, monitoring analytics. And that goes with continuous improvement. You can't improve what you don't know is happening. So we've seen a lot of tooling, new tooling coming up on different topics and different subject matters. Obviously, tools like Datadog, Sentry. We mentioned Blackfire on the performance side as well. So monitoring is even more important these days. You really need to understand what is happening, as a lot of those applications are getting more complex and also are scaling a lot more. You need to know what is happening. Something that has no impact when you've got 1,000 users may have a huge impact with 10,000 or 50,000. So you need to understand that. You really need to understand how the application works and how the application works on the infrastructure. Because, well, when you've got performance issues, it can come from so many different places. And that's the same for analytics, understanding the behavior, being able to actually define where you need to work on. I'm going to quote Blackfire again there, but we've defined what we call an impact score, which is basically on the transaction that are being used a lot and that are slowing things down. If you have a slow transaction that is called twice a month, sure, gonna be great to improve it, but not a priority. If you have a median transaction that is called a median time, that's different. It's going to consume a lot more resources and it's going to impact a lot more users. So that's where you should focus. So monitoring is key everywhere and on every component, and that should all work together. And right now, that's kind of the issue. Developers add their monitoring tool on the app, sysadmin have their own, DevOps may have their own as well. So we need to be able to kind of combine all of that to really see what is happening on the whole chain and not just at one specific place. The last one, and I think we're kind of getting less about that. Obviously, COVID happened 4 years ago. We haven't forgotten about it, but
made a big change. Big change in working.
But we've seen all those companies getting people back into the office and stuff.
Yes.
But collaboration is still a huge issue. And that's something that's still a real struggle for a lot of people these days. I don't know what's your take on this, Corey, but
I think it's a struggle because there's so many, we've entered this world, there's so many different options, right? Like it's which one does, everything does something specific. So you're like, oh, I can use this, I can use this, I can use this. And we end up having too many, in my opinion, where I would just like to see remote work tools to be like, just give me a unified location. How often, as an example, do you have to get on a call and either it's a Zoom call or it's a Google call or it's an Azure or it's a Teams call and you have to switch your camera or you got to switch your audio and you got to see who's taking care of what? That is one of the most frustrating things. And I have seen it happen time and time again. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you see it over and over and over, you want more of a seamless interaction, whether it's across all tools or anything along those lines. The same thing happens internally at these companies, is right. If that's what we're doing just from a forward-facing perspective on video calls, imagine working as a team within, internally of your developers and your engineers and this and that. Now they have to collaborate. Well, maybe this one's working out of this program and this one's working out of this program, or we just adopted a new one. Now you're siloing them and you're not meaning to do it because they need these tools. But this becomes, well, did you look at my Jira board? Well, no. But did you look at my Trello board? No. So now you have that going back and forth. So I think that this
just
escalated.
put Jira everywhere.
Just put Jira on everything. No, but at the same time, there's so many things. It's added so much. It's become bloated. And I think we really need to scale back a little bit and have more unified remote work tools, personally.
Yeah. Okay, let's move to the second part of the discussion. We've tried to isolate like 5 trends, topics that we really think are important for us as a company, but also for our clients, where obviously we're doing some work on, but they're, and when I say they, our customers also are doing a lot of work on those different topics. So let's get on. And once again, we can't put AI aside. If it's not clear right now how it's going to impact infrastructure in the short term, we've seen a huge impact on the development side, for the best and the worst at the same time. So obviously, the crazy thing you can do with Copilot, Cursor, whatever tools you're using are amazing. You can speed up the process, you can learn a lot faster, you can debug things faster. It's kind of amazing. I'm a huge advocate for this. I've been using Cursor for 6 months exclusively and getting so much time. However, those tools need a lot of supervision, meaning that I'm able to use them because I've been a developer for 20 years. So I know what to ask, I know how to ask it, and I know how to review it, which obviously is not the case for more, let's say, junior people and stuff. So we need to be really careful about this. That could lead to skill degradation and being over reliant on those tools. And also something really interesting, we have internally at the company the creator of the Symfony framework, which is the most popular open source framework right now. And he was telling us that what we see also is a derived usage where people actually just take the results of the auto-completion and just don't ask themselves if that's okay or not. That means because the AI has been trained on what's publicly available, that solution that was presented could be actually outdated or not the best way to do it in your use case. So you still need to figure out if anything that's being outputted is actually right for you. So be careful about this.
AI is as powerful as you can make it. So
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into all the other risks, intellectual property, security, and stuff like this,
sure.
compliance. Those are completely different subjects. But
Yes,
as a developer, it's incredibly useful. But once again, be careful with it. So we'll see a lot more about this coming in the next few months. There are a lot of announcements. Poolside.ai is putting up a model dedicated to coding only. Copilot is getting better every day.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes. But I think we would be foolish to not take that into account and start testing it. Even if you're in a company that has strict compliance rules, you need to start actually launching those discussions and start trying things out. Not using them maybe on your main production workflows and stuff, but still starting to try things out, because that's going to have a huge impact on our whole ecosystem in the next few months.
Yeah, I agree, ideally, because AI really is only as good as we're going to make it. So if we need to test it more, we need to stop being scared of it and really start implementing it into places so that it can get better. I mean, if we want the tech to get better, we got to do it ourselves. So
exactly. All right. Second, whoops. I went too far.
Way over there, way far. So
yeah. Second
cloud
topic
application platforms.
Definitely our wheelhouse, cloud application platforms.
For sure, absolutely. So I don't know if any of you saw, but Gartner has actually just released an entire quadrant of cloud application platforms, trying to really explain where it is and where it fits in today's tech world. We're seeing more and more of this trend go up and up because we see customers and companies really get away from the hardware piece. I don't want to manage my AWS Elasticsearch anymore. I don't want to take care of my Azure, VM stack. I want to be able to just code as quick as possible and have it, again, back to, as we talked about containerization, building all of that out quickly, efficiently, and then I can just get to work. I'm not spending more time like, oh, go tweak the firewall for a little bit, or, oh, we really need to optimize those resources, scale up, scale down, move everything around, and not really developing those web apps and those web-based apps or those backend services, APIs, anything along those lines. I want to be able to stand something up fairly quickly. I want to automate it, and I want it to be up and running and efficiently be able to log in and just start get going from a work perspective, right? So they're and that's the cloud application platforms. That's what they're designed to do, right? They're facilitating that deployment process and those runtime executions and management of what modern cloud applications are today. And that's why we see a lot of people going this route. This means that your developers can worry more about building that code and not worried about, hey, I need to make a change to my AWS VM, right? Or my Windows-based VM. I don't want to go in there and tweak that anymore. I don't want to make these changes. I don't want to have to worry about operating systems, right? That's another thing. I don't want to worry about like, oh, I need to put on the latest version of Windows security patch, or I need to put in the latest version of Debian, whatever. I just want that to happen automatically, is what I say. And that's ideally where we're trying to get to from a company perspective, is to make sure that those processes and those underlying compute infrastructures are taken care of and handled within the versioning of the code, right? So when I do a deployment or I do a push from whatever GitHub, GitLab that I'm doing, I'm able to automate that process, and that's going to build out and stand up what I need. And I don't have to worry about going in there and installing MySQL for the umpteenth time, right? I don't want to do that anymore. And as we see this happening on developer teams, less and less from the management side, we see more of this adoption of these cloud application platforms. And again, totally in our wheelhouse. But again, I think that we're going to see a very a big shift this year for this, because people can become more agile. You can develop faster, and that's really what the goal is.
Yeah, I think it's not just about development, but we've seen also a lot of people that have been building their IDP for years with mixed results, or sometimes maybe good results, but a lot of pain. Actually realizing that maybe there is a better way to do this. All the tooling around IDPs, obviously, I'm gonna cite Kubernetes there, but all the tooling, all the ecosystem around it is not easy. The learning curve is really, really steep. And finding the right people to do that job and keeping them on board is not easy. Well, I've been interviewing around 100 startups in the past 6 months, and what we see there is interesting. If the company is a tech company, like they're doing a tech product, 90% of their team is highly tech oriented, that's usually is going to go fine. Still a bit of pain, but they're going to overcome it and they're going to take the benefit from it. For all the other companies that are, I don't know, in retail, manufacturing, and stuff like this, that's not their core activities. And that become a problem for them because they launch everything, they invest a lot, build up the team, and 6 months later, nothing is really working as it should. And well, they start killing the projects. We've seen that in the food industry, one of our biggest clients, in the healthcare industry as well. Even like multi-billion companies sometimes can't get that things right because they don't have the right people, the right strategy, and the right commitments, and they were underestimating both budget and time a lot. So yeah, I would say just always compare. There are really good few options, including us, obviously, on the market. But cloud application platform can actually get you up and running so easily and so fast instead of building that yourself.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that for some use cases, maybe you're better off building your own things because the project's so specific, I don't know, IoT related and stuff like this. Maybe in that case, you need something on your own. But for most of the use cases of web applications and websites and stuff, usually there are pretty good products out there that will get the job done without any issues.
Yep.
All right, interesting one. We're talking finances.
Oh, this one's you.
I don't want to do finance. All right, let's go.
I don't want to do finance. I don't either.
When I was interviewing those startups, I was asking them basically, what is the part of your revenue that goes straight into your cloud cost? And obviously for startup, revenue is a weird word because, investment and everything like this. But the average I've came up with was around 40%. So 40% of the money they were making one way or the other was actually getting poured back into AWS, Azure, and GCP. And without nearly any control on this. So They don't understand the bills. They don't take the time to analyze it. They're so focused on building the product and getting their users and launching everything that actually cloud costs are not a priority. But then 2 years later, when they actually realize that it's taking up so much, they have to dig into it. And it's a real mess. Doing FinOps on cloud is, it's a job. It's a job of like 4 people full time to actually customize everything,
Yep.
tailor everything, make sure nothing is running for nothing, and then obviously dealing the different contracts with the providers and everything like this. So it's really important. It can kill companies pretty easily if it gets out of control. And post-COVID, we've seen all the investors also asking for more profitability out of all the startup and all the companies in general. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, everyone wanted growth, more users, get the market, get those market shares. Now it's a lot different. We see that users are not really sticky to a specific solution. They go where the price is right and where the value is.
Yep.
So now you need to be profitable. And that's a big change for the startup industry. And getting your cloud costs under control is a must if you want to be more profitable. That's usually the second most important cost after payroll.
Yep.
Definitely. So you need to work on that, but it's not easy. It takes time. I think for us that are really in the cloud business, it took us maybe 6 years to build up the team to actually do that efficiently and make sure that we're not losing money every month on our different providers. So you need the data, you need the people, you need the process. It's really, really complex. Just to give you an idea right now, Platform.sh is a 300 people company. We've got 6 people doing FinOps and cloud cost optimization. So it's not a small task, but it's a required one.
And yeah, it comes around to two things, right? Not just costs of like infrastructure, but also costs of people's time, right? So you see IT services that figure out automation to basically, using something like Ansible to, free up hundreds and hundreds of hours of manual labor. Like that's cost. That's saving you that time, and that's going to reduce your costs on those employees and what they're doing these days. And then you also have simple things like just using, reducing cloud costs by implementing any of these services that are out there, monitoring your underutilized instances or your overutilized instances, and having full visibility and control of those resources and saying, hey, we're not using this. Back to Kubernetes again. I know we keep bringing this up, but the whole point of scaling up and down, are you monitoring that? Do you know when you need to scale? Or are you just like, surprise, we upsized 2 months ago, had no idea, and we just found out this month because we got the bill, right? Now you need to know that and be aware of that at all times, because otherwise it's just money on the table.
Yeah, you're talking to someone that ran a test cluster with 1,200 CPUs for a month. Yes.
Ooh.
That happens.
No, that
because
shouldn't
at the
happen.
time we didn't have the process to check it. So yeah.
Whoops. Yeah, but could you imagine having to? I say, could you imagine? You have to tell somebody. Can you turn that off, please?
Yes.
Oh goodness.
No, and you raised a good point about the TCO, the total cost of ownership, which is not just the COGS, but also the amount of time spent on this.
Absolutely.
And that's something that is always really hard to calculate because like 10 minutes of your time every day might sound nothing, but it stacks up.
Yeah.
And if that's something you do at a large scale with like 50 people in the DevOps team or development team, that's gonna have a huge impact at the end of the year. So that's something we're always trying to discuss with our clients and prospects. How can we have them optimize those, once again, small tasks that takes a bit of time, and making sure they understand that all the hours they're actually working on something that could be automated is hours lost and costing them money as well. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
All right, let's go to my favorite topic, sustainability and carbon optimization. I said I'm French, so despite I'm European. So obviously I'm also looking a lot at all the different European regulation about climate and stuff like this. Platform.sh signed the Climate Accord of Paris in 2017, and we've been doing a lot internally, but also for our clients to make sure we actually reduce our carbon footprint a lot. And that's not easy, especially for a remote company when you're telling everyone that we're going to cut on flights. It's always hard, but it's needed. We have to do it. It's really important. So we've got all the different audits by Greenly and stuff like this that we do every year. But most importantly for our clients, we push them to do the right choice there. So just to give you an order of magnitude. So if you're running a workload in a data center in Arizona right now, you're going to consume about 600 grams, which is approximately 20 ounces of carbon per kilowatt hour of energy you're using. If you're running the same one in Montreal, Quebec, it's going to be 29 grams instead of 600. Same for France, it's going to be around 80. Germany, based on their coal industry, is really high. So if you don't need to be in a specific location because of regulation or anything like this, it's really easy to actually move your application somewhere else. The network effect is usually like so small that your users won't ever see a difference, but you're getting a huge benefit on the carbon generation. And for US companies right now, there is no financial impact except making the right choice. But for Europeans, they're going to start getting fines. They're going to have to report on those consumption as well. There are big regulation called CSRD coming into place, well, already in place, where basically all the large corporation in Europe needs to report their carbon consumption. So that's why we've put all the process in place at Platform.sh also to give those clients the numbers so they can actually report them legally to the European Parliament. So we need to do all that. That's really important. So we're definitely focused on us optimizing our own region, our own densities to make sure we don't waste any resources at all. And also making sure we put them in locations that are carbon friendly. I was mentioning Quebec and Sweden, for example, in Europe, instead of the places that are, well, both Corey and I live in Texas, so we know about hot and humid. But putting data center in Texas could make sense if you really need them on the spot. But climate-wise, this is a disaster.
Yes.
So that's all those process. And we know all the company needs to make that effort, but it's really hard to understand. So we're also trying to help our clients, once again, make the right decision for that. That's also why we launch a discount for any resource that run on those, what we call green region, actually getting a discount on the price. Because even if those regions are for us more expensive, in the end, it's for the greater good that we're doing those things.
For the greater good.
All right, and preparing those slides, I learned a new expression, shift left security. So Corey, up to you.
Yeah, so let's do a quick, what is shift left security? So shift left security means conducting basically testing sooner in the software process. So traditionally DevOps is, plan, code, build, test, deploy, monitor, right? That's the life cycle. But as you see with that process, testing tends to typically occur after the software is built, right? Which makes sense, right? Because you have something to test. So that may include, I don't know, integration testing, performance testing, security testing, all of those things. The downside with that is that with like security testing, that may slow down or even halt development because you end up hitting a wall and going, oh, did we do this thing? Did we hit that checkbox? Did we manage whatever that was supposed to be? So the entire shift left methodology on security means to include security in the planning and creation stages, right? So in the creation stages, typically there's no product to test during those stages, but security modeling helps also to anticipate security needs, reduce issues later in development, et cetera, et cetera. So, DevOps has been trying to figure out a way to get everybody aligned and streamlined and really to eliminate a lot of that friction between teams on how they're handling security piece by piece. So that's really what shift left security is from the essence. So we want to make sure that when someone is deploying something, whether it's a web app, an API, or whatever the configuration is, security is always top of mind, and making sure that that's in and built into the entire workflow so that there are no surprises and you don't end up getting stuck and going, we need to go back 3 steps because we forgot and left this one piece out, or we didn't even think about something in the future, we have to do something along the lines of OWSAP rules or something along the line at the edge, right? You get to the edge and go, oh, how are we going to solve this? We didn't think about this before. So the idea is always to have that security mindset through everything. And again, that goes along with the quality assurance to making sure that your product is compliant in the ways that it needs to be, and making sure that when you do these conversations with the C-suite, you guys understand quality assurance and security are top of mind, and making sure that everything is covered and there are no surprises. And this goes back to the discussion of the edge. This goes back to containerization and infrastructure. This goes back to, bot attacks and everything we've seen in the last 2024, right? We no longer can we just stand something up and go, we'll put security at the end. It needs to be from day one.
And that's also where using a cloud application platform is going to help, because most of those security controls are actually dedicated to them and right there out of the box, because they're managing that for a lot of different customers, not just for that specific project.
Exactly.
I know you're a cook, Corey, but if I understand, shift left is more, so let's say I'm trying to do a recipe and something goes wrong, but I don't know it.
I got this. I'm
and
not
the
a
result
chef.
is really bad, which usually happen with me. So that means more like testing the batter and testing the mix.
Okay, let me give you an example, right? Let me give you an example, like from a cooking perspective. And Greg, you're here, so you're going to love this. So imagine you're baking a cake, right? And you accidentally replace the sugar with salt, right? It's a mistake. It happens. You might not have them labeled. Well, testing that would be, from the application side, is testing it after you take the cake out of the oven, right? You've taken it out, you've tasted it, and you're like, ooh, that's not sugar. Well, if you would have done the shift left methodology, right, it makes more sense to taste the batter to know whether it's sugar or salt. That way you don't get to the cake stage, right? You now know exactly what it's going to be when it comes out of the oven. So that's really a good analogy to see what shift left security is. Do that testing now. Taste the batter. Make sure you know what's in there before you put the cake in the oven. Don't figure it out after the fact. And that's really the key here.
And we all know that we should all test everything and have 100% coverage on everything, but usually testing gets delayed or cut out because of budget, because it's painful.
Right.
We've done some studies, and we have some colleagues that got some numbers around this. A bug that make his way to production usually costs 40 times more. Oh, 30 times, sorry. Because that's the point. They have an impact on your customers, on your service, on reputation, awareness, whatever that is. And if that's a critical bug, that could even expose data or whatever. But then you need to take the time to fix it. That means an urgent fix. You need to stop everything you're doing to rush on that situation. And that's bad for everyone. That's also where you actually break other stuff while fixing it. And in the end, it costs 30 times more in terms of time and dollars. So the more you test in the first phases, the better.
Yep, absolutely. And it also gives you that, enables faster resolution time, right? So by the time you get to the end and you've already got this, if there is a security issue, you can resolve that much faster because it's throughout the entire process. And that's ideally where you want to be. You don't want to spend a lot of time and going, oh, wait, what step was that at? Was that in the build phase? Was that in the plan phase? Where do I need to go back to? No, you can resolve it quickly and move forward faster. And that is it. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Corey Dockendorf. I'm a solutions architect here at Platform.sh. But I do want to say, are there any questions, comments, concerns, or emotional outbursts? I take all of these things. Just looking at the Q&A really quick.
I can take some too.
I mean, he can take some too, I guess. But if there are no questions, I do also want to offer that basically we are happy to provide a custom solution-based option with your needs, right? So you can literally book a complimentary one-on-one session with myself, the solutions architect, or one of our other solutions architects. We have a form actually that just got posted in chat. If you're interested to learn more, if you just want to have a conversation with one of us, by all means, please fill out that form. Let us know. We would love to talk to you and hear about what you're doing and what you're building today, and maybe somewhere where we can help with Platform.sh and Blackfire.io to really help you optimize everything in the year of 2025.